Welcome to Dugite Media podcast number 7, something like that. Anyway, we're down a member. The other host is off in the Ukraine, making sure that no Ukrainian woman or child goes unmolested during the Russian advance. He's doing God's work on that front. It's a joke, of course. He's actually bombing Yemenis' weddings. He works as a military contractor on the side. The high-end stuff because it's on our side. Anyway, it's all a bit silly. I do say too much. I really don't like that about myself. It's a challenge to work on for this sort of thing. Also, talking to yourself for upwards of half an hour is a challenge, but challenge is kind of why I'm here today. Again. Here to make the most of a weekend where we can't get together, do the podcast. We should continue the grind. Look, the basic goal for what we're trying to do here for consistency is based on a stat I heard on the Chris Williams podcast, Modern Wisdom podcast, run by Chris Williams, because you have to believe every stat you hear on the internet is true. Something along the lines of there are over 1 million podcasts, but 75% of them don't make it past 4 episodes, and whatever other percentage don't make it past 20, such that if you make it past recording 20 podcasts, you're by default in the top 1% of podcasters on the planet. Which is a pretty inspiring stat, really, because it's just taken us a couple hours a week to make the time to get together and talk some shit about things that we're interested in. Creating a show for autistic people who spend too much time on the internet, I guess. Just like every other podcast that's available. Taken big inspiration from Rogan, funnily enough, who would have thought. Mid-20s young male listens to the Joe Rogan Experience and has done for a couple of years. I'm not exactly the rarest fish in the sea at that regard, but I do quite like what he does, and that he appears to make it not work for himself by just talking about things that he's interested in, which is kind of what we like to do here. And we've got a bit of an interest in media. It's not either of our day jobs, but we're quite passionate about the idea that with the technology that we have access to in the modern day, we can create to not quite the studio level, although that gap is tightening up between what blokes can do at home and what the big studios can do, which is why we quite like the analog horror type stuff on the internet. Well, my partner does primarily, and he's getting me slowly into it, but I think part of the appeal of having the two of us, that if there's something one of us is interested in, the other person has to explain it to them from first principles and hype them up, get them into it, which sort of brings the audience along with it. We can go on a journey together, which is a bit wanky and touchy-feely, but fuck it, why not? What's the worst that could happen? That people are made passionate about things that they didn't necessarily know existed. Is it running free advertising for content creators that we like? Maybe, but fuck it. What's the worst that can happen if more people spend more time looking at small creators rather than things that are just on Netflix? Living the lifestyle that I live currently, don't have much time to just sit down and watch Netflix in the way that I used to, but it means that I'm finding myself taking these smaller gaps in what I'm doing and listening to a podcast while I drive or while I do some work, or watching a 30-minute YouTube video as opposed to sitting down and just rewatching Rick and Morty again. Although, that, to be fair, that is on the cards. I'm about due to just go through and watch it from start to finish in 3 sittings, because just like having a favourite flavour of ice cream, I appear to have a favourite flavour of content, and we'll just watch the same thing over and over again. I find myself I'm like that with music too. There's few playlists that I actually really enjoy and things that appear to mean a lot to me, so I just listen to that over and over again, just enough to sour it for myself and then go off it for a couple of months and then come back to it. But in this age of being able to find media that's quite niche and targeted to yourself, we feel that it would be doing ourselves a disservice to not try and create something ourselves, to not engage in that when we have such cheap, not cheap, but historically very cheap access to high quality professional equipment that I just immediately begin to kick over. We have this access to what 5 years ago, 10 years ago was like top of the line studio quality equipment, and you can get it from just like an electronic store in your local town, in some like local to the suburb you're in. It's not niche equipment. It's actually quite affordable in the grand scheme of things, and with relatively small time investment, it allows you to create something for yourself, which I think is what we've learnt being younger blokes over the last couple of years. Coming out of high school, most of us going to uni, everyone trying to find their own ways and really iron out what's meaningful to the individuals and what's not. And you can see the guys that are struggling more with that, pushing themselves less outside their comfort zone, and those of us that seem to have a better handle on things are willing to take risks and try stuff and put ourselves out there a little bit more. So we thought, in the safest possible business decision, that we would start to have opinions on the internet, because that's never backfired once on anyone in the history of online communication. No one has ever had negative consequences from sharing what they think online. So we really think that it's a fantastic business call to engage in that sort of behavior. More broadly, we want to really encourage people to do their own thing, and to really get out into the world. So that's where the concept of Dugite Media came from. The dugite in itself is a snake local to the part of Australia that we live in, and it's just something catchy, like we needed an animal, and dugite works kind of well. And they're quite local to the area, so it fits the content a little bit, grounds it a little to the experience of our lives, and to say that we're an example on... We're a story about how to go about this sort of thing, perhaps, but we're not claiming to be this broad international one-size-fits-all set of ideas. We're just detailing our own experiences and what we found to be powerful and moving forces within our own lives on how to be. And effectively, it comes down to do hard things. Not really much more to it than that. If you're enjoying yourself too much, if life's easy, you'll find yourself drifting further and further away from happiness more broadly. I think I found in high school I was a musician, and then I stopped doing that when I left high school and went to uni. And as I've discussed on previous podcasts, it's only been very recently when I picked up a guitar, because guitar had defeated me in the past. I was always a brass player, and so to pick up something hard to do and then learn from scratch and start over being bad at something, that's possibly been the most joyous experience I've had in the last 5 years of not playing any musical instruments. A part of my existence that was day in, day out for my entire developmental period, and I did quite enjoy it. And then for some reason I just stopped. And that theme of course, you're unhappy because you aren't doing the things that have always made you happy. It's something that pops up a lot in certainly our friend circle. That's come up, and it's just so easy in modern life to slip into comfort and easy ways of doing things, and like Netflix is however many bucks a month. It's nothing in the grand scheme of things, and you can sink so much of your time into it. I don't mean to just target Netflix. I personally go back and forth on if I can even have Instagram installed on my phone. Since the Elon takeover of Twitter, I got Twitter for the first time because I didn't have Instagram, and was kind of angling for something within myself. And I tried to justify it as, news, politics, it's all happening right now. I need to have it on my phone. And then I just sink time into it like I was with Reels. Don't even want to think about TikTok because, I've found that the algorithms can defeat me. That's my point of weakness. I have too much stuff to do. I have a day job. I have personal life. I have a podcast. We're talking about doing YouTube videos and creating all this content. We've got big aspirations, and to just have Instagram on my phone, I find you end up there because people send you messages, they send you reels, and then all of a sudden you've scrolled for 15 minutes, and that's 15 minutes you don't get back. And you just did for no reason. I don't mind, however, on days off or time set aside to relax it, I find that I've never tried heroin, but just scrolling reels for a bit is a lot like heroin because it feels really good and relaxing the entire time you're doing it. You kind of feel gross and icky afterwards, but you did enjoy yourself for the 45 to 180 minutes that you ended up just sitting there doing nothing, being a bit of a scumbag and not contributing to society or the household. I find too much of that in my friends, that there's so many easy distractions. There's so many things that we do like. Grew up a little nerdy. We do like video games. We've enjoyed all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it just sort of, it sucks time in a way that you don't realize when you're a teenager. And yeah, going from childhood to teenagehood to adulthood, there's this gradual dropping off the ability to do stuff like that. And as you think 6 hours of a school day is the end of the world, and how am I ever going to work a full-time job? But then as an adult, you eventually find that it's the 8-hour workday or 10-hour workday, whatever you do, life is actually around that. So if you want to do anything else other than your day job, you've got to make time in those sorts of spaces. And all of a sudden, tracking how much can you cut into sleep to get your projects done, and it's all very, very time consuming. Life is inherently time consuming. Simultaneously, you have to live in the present moment, so you can be working on projects, working on these things, but you also have to remember to make time to live your life and enjoy it. I think the biggest thing for me, productivity-wise, is a Modern Wisdom podcast, as I brought up earlier. I found it through Rogan, and since then, it's just all of Chris Williamson's content is fantastic. He does his 3-Minute Monday. There's no excuses if you're at all interested in improving your life these days to not be. You can immerse yourself in this content, the world of productivity online and how to be the best person. Andrew Huberman is fantastic as well, but a bit of a science nerd. I've done a tertiary education, not directly in that sort of field, but tertiary trained with a science degree, and I spend so much time in that sort of world of optimization and then just don't really do it. I'm still nowhere near as lean as I'd like to be, but I get a lot in the week. Yes, so with this Dugite Media idea is something that's been kicked around for a while, with varying amounts of the friend group involved in it. We had a lot of initial interest, but it was sort of weeded out by the members of the team that weren't super into the businessy side of things and actually putting in significant hours around their day job were weeded out by the initial process and the planning, and guys that, look, no discredit to them. Not everyone's cut out for making their downtime into work. It's not something that I recommend for everyone, but if you want to make something extra of your existence, if you want to make something of your own, that's kind of how you have to do it, unless you're just sitting on a trust fund or something else. But I find that from the hard work of having to do it the hard way is how you get the results that you would want, how you learn the lessons, produce something of value because it comes from a genuine place. For a laugh, let's go over, rather than try and go through the goals of Dugite Media, which there'll be a YouTube video that I don't know when they'll be uploaded with reference to this. At the moment, we're just recording these things and not uploading them yet because we kind of want to have a little bit of a backlog so that if we have to take time off for personal reasons from doing it, that we can keep the show going rather than just in time recording. Having a little bit of a backlog just means that we can't cover cultural stuff as it happens, although we probably hope to move towards that. But for now, striking that balance of doing living your own life and also building the podcast together is a little bit of it's a tight line to walk. And hence I'm here doing this by myself this weekend rather than just waiting another week, because every time that you just start pushing that rock up that hill is another victory for the Sisyphus within all of us. What I will go through today is going back over the Dugite Media 2022 plan, revised Jan 2022. This is back when there were a couple more of us involved, and it's 14 months ago now, and we started the podcast a couple months ago. Besides that, we haven't really done much, but these things can take time to set up and get going, and it's doing the groundwork of finding the time and the the reasons within yourself to motivate yourself to do it that is the big hurdle. Because we've had this idea since we were like 13, 14, like we wanted to do something, we just didn't know what it looked like. So to turn around and actually start doing it now, it gives me certainly the warm fuzzies. I can't speak for my counterpart, or I'm sure he feels very much the same. We did do some YouTube content when we were teenagers, and that is as unholily cringe as you would imagine it would be. And it actually physically repulses me to watch it and listen to my own voice. To be fair, listening back on the podcast to edit it physically repulses me at the sound of my own voice. But to go back to like pretty much prepubescent and not exactly world-class writers, we reckon that'll be a video down the line, potentially for a Patreon audience or something like that. We'll find a way to work it in, but it's very much going to hurt my feelings to put that out there, let alone me having to react to it in real time. And anyway, it should be fun. In the name of embarrassing ourselves, let's go through this old business plan, I guess. We've got a vision statement, because I did take a management class at uni, and it's cringe to think about, but it's a good way. A vision statement and mission statement is kind of important, because when the going gets tough, you really need to have a direction and a vision and a mission, really. I don't know if it's cringe or based, as the kids would say. I put our vision statement as a Dostoevsky quote, which is a world inspired and awed by the beauty of the natural world and those who inhabit it, as the world will be saved by beauty. That's our vision. And look, it's for sure the right track in the cold light of day and sobriety and just being reflective and having to read it out to the internet, read my innermost thoughts to the internet. It's a little hard to go through, but I stand with myself on that front, that there is beauty in the world and there is goodness, and we really need to be drawing attention to that and finding ways to manifest that in our lives day to day. Otherwise, what's even the point of being here? You can get a lot of clicks and a lot of attention by being negative on the internet. But why are you here if you're just wanting to do that? You have to have a vision about how we should interact with the world and where we should go. And it doesn't have to be spiritual or religious. It can be quite secular. But I think that all the different models of how to deal with that speak to the same thing, that there is good and there is beauty, and that should be a point of focus if you want to lead a happy life. Mission statement was, and this isn't necessarily what we're doing now, but it was to create a variety of media outputs, from still photos to feature-length non-fiction narrative-based films, showcase stories of the environment of Western Australia and those who inhabit it, to inspire our audience to connect with nature and themselves in a grounded and semi-spiritual fashion as an indirect antidote to the issues of modern life. What a cop-out fucking answer, to inspire our audience to connect with nature and themselves as grounded and semi-spiritual. Look, I've become both ends of the horseshoe on the spiritual front. We can't deal with this semi-spiritual, like dipping your toe in the water. Like, you're either going to go whole hog with that sort of thing, or you're just going to be secular. So I form both ends of the horseshoe and say, look, either approach it from the secular view and there's still truth to be found there, or just approach it from the spiritual view and there's truth to be found there. But I don't think I'll be towing the center line on that one with this project. I will either be doing the good secular work with Dugite stuff, and the spiritual stuff is a problem for my own life, or a spin-off project or something like that. I don't think we need to mix the two too much. I'm going to have my opinions, but it's not the point of the show to just hear my inner monologue all the time. I have kind of what it is, but I'm hard to pin down on that sort of thing. It changes day to day and week to week. A feature-length non-fiction narrative-based film which showcases stories of the environment of West Australia and those who inhabit it. It kind of sounds like I wanted to play journalist, which I could, but again, that's for YouTube stuff. That's not necessarily the podcast. The podcast is more about playing comedian, or from quite a rural part of a remote side of the planet. There is a comedy scene in the capital city of the state. I don't want to make the time in the week to go and do that and to eat shit on stage, so I can just eat shit on the internet from the comfort and privacy of my own home, or wherever we're recording the podcast from. So I think that's what we want the podcast to be, Just the Rogan model, like just talk about things that you're interested in with people that interest you. And if that's just the two of us talking some shit and talking about some grouse content on the internet, then that's the way to go, I think. Because otherwise, how can we motivate ourselves to make a show that we don't want to make? We can save that for the YouTube stuff and grind out proper videos and do writing and all that sort of stuff. But the podcast, we just want to keep consistent and lighthearted and easy to put out. Well, lighthearted predominantly. We got a little into the weeds of the state of modern psychiatry, which I suppose isn't that lighthearted, but it is what I'm interested in, and the mental health stuff is fascinating, and that it does tie back into the core thing we're trying to do with Dugite here. So, organizational goals, raise capital, source capable equipment to create a competitive media product. That's actually not that hard. It's just money. You can do good things these days with lots of things that are just available off the shelf. Like, we don't think this podcast is that poorly produced, and currently we spend a bit on hardware, but not much compared to what it would have cost 10 years ago, and we've just been running so far free software. I like Adobe products, but I'm not made of Adobe money, and when there's programs like Audacity, or I'm not sure what our partner uses. By the way, I'm flying by the seat of my pants with recording this one. Just downloaded Audacity, and I'm working out of a home office as opposed to our little studio which we created, so I hope it comes out alright. I'll palm this off to him to edit because I'm a good friend like that, but yeah, it should be good. Create a variety of media outputs and test their engagement popularity with the intention of a couple of streams of engagement feeding into the final feature-length products. Look, we've got to approach it a little bit businessy and see what works. The environment of online media changes so rapidly these days and tends towards like Instagram Reels and TikTok clips and just stuff like that is attention grabby. We don't need to end up doing video clips of the podcast with Subway Surfers or Family Guy running underneath it, or GTA 5 videos, whatever it is to like hold visual engagement. We don't really want to do that, but to ignore the fact that social media has gone to this short form video style thanks to TikTok is suicide for engagement and getting a message out there. So we've got to play that game a little bit, see what works, stay a little bit on top of it, just be a little self-aware. So as much as the whole point of it is to do what we want, there's better ways to go about it necessarily than just doing it the way that we learnt to years and years ago, coming up in the age of still photos on Instagram and the YouTube algorithm as it was 7 years ago as opposed to right now. And also in the organizational goals, some bullshit about forged content creation, social media, and admin skills in all participants. That fell through the fucking floor immediately. Just the most basic requirements and deadlines broke some people immediately, so we cut from like 4 people working on this together to just 2. And it sort of stayed like that because we've kept it tight to the people that are just wanting to actually work hard on it and create a show and put it out. Then we've had more success of it. So don't lean on your friends to be more than they are or put themselves in any way that they don't necessarily want to. And you've got to read between the lines a little bit on that, because all the guys that we were working with really said they wanted to and really enjoyed the idea of doing it. And then when it push came to shove to start like editing reels and all that crap, it just sort of fell apart. Putting money into, you don't want to have to convince people to join in. If you have to convince them, they're not on board. That's a lesson of starting this small form media stuff, is choose circles well. Tight little circles are the way to go. We have plans to do larger content things. So like big inspirations for us are Mighty Car Mods, Fort 9. Yeah, and like vehicle content space, because we have Y chromosomes. We like things with internal combustion engines. And yeah, creating content like that would actually be really fun. Finding ways to turn what we do for fun into work is kind of what this is all about. But it means that if we share that process with the world, even if we inspire one other person to do challenging things and make adventures out of weekends and all that sort of jazz, even if we just inspire one person to do that, get one little bit of positive feedback, then it's all worth it. Because let's face it, everyone finds ways to spend their money. If we didn't spend that on equipment, we would spend it on Lego, or, well, I wouldn't. Some of us would spend it on Lego. Those of us out currently committing war crimes against the Yemenis would definitely spend it on Lego. And fuck that guy, and I hope he listens to all of this while he edits this. Kiss, kiss. Love you. I love your work. Thank you for cleaning up my shit. And when I name drop myself twice so far, my goodness. Amateur hour here on the recording front. Yeah, so the rest of it's boring. It's like input strategy, output strategy, delegation of responsibilities. That's fucking hilarious. Do it yourself. If you can't, start with something you can do yourself. Get good at doing that. And then if you have time and space to take on more responsibilities, do so. But you can't be trying to start out by delegating. I need to practice editing. I need to get on that because I can't be telling people how to do their jobs or delegating things when I have no experience in the actual task. So that's something that I've got to work on. It's the actual back-end editing production, which is stuff I did in high school a little bit, but I'm half a decade out of practice at least. So I need to pull my thumb out my ass and do that on top of all the other things that I have to do. Yeah, we had a couple ideas that I don't know what we'll actually get to, but once we've got some more cameras, some more equipment, the ability to record things in an appropriately professional way, we've got some test footage of that. Yeah, the idea of doing like to inspire people to like a budget camping challenge. Just for all the people that always say, oh, camping's too expensive, or I don't have the time, I don't have the money, how can I get into that? To just, for a laugh, go and buy just the dirtiest, cheapest, nastiest camping stuff and go and do an overnighter somewhere and record it on a sport car. I've run a sport car to record it all, and it'd be interesting to do just to show people that, like, you don't have to go to the 4-wheel drive shop and finance a new Jimny and lift it and put a spare second battery in and spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to do it the way that the companies that sell you these things insist that you have to do it, otherwise you won't have a good time. You can have a good time by doing it the easy way, really. The cheapest way. And really, we've always found that you have the best time doing it a non-optimal way and having to overcome small obstacles. The most fun camping trip we've ever been on is we were first, second year uni, something like that. We had very little money, very little budget, and we managed to make like a whole week-long trip. Or was splitting cheap whiskey to get us around, and we still had this ridiculous hedonic time. We were cold and wet a lot of the time, but warmed up around fires, and it makes for better stories, the fact that it was a little bit shit and a little bit hard. And that's sort of what we're carrying through now in the ideas for content that we want to do, is that you've got to, as Jocko Willink would say, embrace the suck. This does suck, this is uncomfortable, but that's why it's going to make a good story. So we want to encourage people to do hard things, embrace the suck, to consider starting their own thing. That does come with the costs of comfort and ease of life, but within life you get to choose your regrets. I'm pulling that quote from somewhere. Use the Churchill fallacy and just say it was Churchill. A quote from Winston Churchill for sure. As in life, you only get to choose your regrets, make decisions and move. I think that's Han from The Fast and Furious. Churchill or Han from The Fast and the Furious, or a bit of both. You get to choose your regrets. The only thing you can do is make decisions and move forward. So running the podcast and talking about doing more video content is cutting into our ability to do other things in our life, like play video games or watch anything. I've effectively not played video games unless I've had COVID or a cold and have a couple of days off work, and then I'll get back into it for about 3 hours before it just breaks me psychologically that I want to be doing something else. I had a whole day off yesterday, and I lasted watching YouTube about 45 minutes before I pulled open the laptop and just started doing a sort of little admin stuff for the podcast and the YouTube channel. And yeah, it didn't last very long at all that I was just going to actually relax. So I find the workflow state a little bit relaxing in itself, and you tick tasks off, you get that little buzz of the feel-good chemicals, and then I can relax having done stuff. Another point is that I've found that no matter how much caffeine I have, no matter how many good intentions I have about what I'm going to get done and how everything works, I'm still only human and I still need to sleep. And I don't want to burn out, because if you burn out, you'll waste more time trying to recover from that. And the lost productivity, the sunk time of productivity is much worse if you actually get all the way to hitting a wall and crashing, as if you just take breaks and learn to manage that. I learned that a lot from exercise and strength work, that the strategies for rest and recovery are as important to overall goal achieving as the actual work itself. So if you're not recovering properly, using your massage gun, finding ways to relax and getting good quality sleep, then you're not, no matter how many hours you spend in the gym, you're not going to hit your goals. And that's a nice metaphor for looking after mental health and mental capacity. The other thing that I'm learning is not all your ideas are good ideas. They might feel like good ideas at the time, but they're not necessarily good ideas, which is a hard lesson I'm still having to try and teach myself. And in the moment, I can have like fleeting grandeur that, oh, this is going to be the greatest thing ever and we're going to make a business out of it. It's going to be great. Really sit down and with those sorts of things, you've got to really flesh it out, follow it through. You can't just go, oh, I should do this and commit to it. I find it helpful to sit down with a mate and really go over it, or sit down with a loved one and really go over it and just talk at them, pretend that they're listening and not just sitting there going, fuck, I wish this idiot would shut up. But yeah, just talk at them even, and then talk yourself out of your own idea. That's the thing, you've got to spend a good amount of time trying to talk yourself into something, but you should also try and talk yourself out of it, and whichever one wins is what you should listen to. Because, yeah, you make decisions and you choose your regrets, but if you can see something's going to go poorly from the outset, then you can save yourself a lot of sunk time on ideas that aren't necessarily good, even though they feel like they're good at the time of having them. Something that I've also learnt is generally ideas had on alcohol need to be considered sober, and ideas had sober probably need to be considered on alcohol too, if that's something you choose to do. Not saying everyone needs to drink. I like alcohol, but it's thanks to Andrew Huberman I have a tortured relationship with it, because it is something heavily involved in my career, but it's also actively neurotoxic. So it's a tool. It's a tool for altering consciousness, and yeah, it's a tortured relationship that I have, but that's potentially a podcast for another time. What else do I have to go through? Look, I'll probably save the rest of this for another time. For now, signing off for the Dugite Media podcast number 7. I'll record an intro and outro at some point. I can dodge all the copyright bullshit by just being my own musician, but I actually need to get good enough at a musical instrument to record something worth having as a jingle in and out. So that's the next goal, is to do that. All right, signing off for Dugite Media. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, and you'll probably enjoy the next one more when my friend is back from committing atrocities in North Ireland against the local population. Alrighty. Actually signing off. Goodbye.